Hi, this is Blaze from The Arts, Culture, and Us, and we want to thank you for joining us tonight. I have my co-host here playing the flute. Maia is an internationally known, multi-talented performer and recording artist, originally from Atlanta, Georgia. Maia is an accomplished vocalist who is often compared to Sarah Vaughan, Miriam Makeba, and Leon Thomas. Maia is now a resident of Los Angeles, California, with her husband, actor Don Harper. She is proficient on several musical instruments, including harp, flute, piccolo, and vibraphone. Maia is an award-winning music composer and songwriter out of the world-renowned AACM in Chicago, with credits as stage, television, voiceover, film actor with SAG. And today we'll be talking with Diana Elizabeth Jordan, and what we're talking about is actors with disabilities, and we'll get into that in a moment. To give you a little bit about Diana, The Road Less Traveled by Norman Vincent Peale is one of Diana Elizabeth Jordan's favorite books because she feels the title is a perfect metaphor for her life's journey, experiencing life as an African American living with disabilities of mild cerebral palsy. She has a unique perspective on discrimination and attitudinal barriers that exist in our society. Yet she has had the strength and commitment not to let that stop her from pursuing her passions of being an actor, producer, and activist. She has committed her life to changing perceptions about disabilities and multicultural diversity. And I'm Michael Blaze, your host.
Perfect.
Did you enjoy that?
I did.
Great.
That's good. That was
So again, this is Blaze, and you are watching The Arts, Culture, and Us, and this must be about the third show that I'm doing on cerebral palsy. And Diana Elizabeth Jordan here, she's an actress, she's a producer, she's a teaching instructor, she's a coach, she's a motivational speaker, and I'd run out of time if I kept on. Bottom line, she's an exceptional person, and she's here to talk to us tonight about, well, I'm going to let my co-host, now you got your breath back?
Yes, I got my breath.
Let my co-host, Maia, the talented one, mother of the universe, Maia, why don't you introduce your friend?
Thank you, Michael, and thank you again for having me. This is always an honor and a pleasure, but this show is even more special. This is one of my girls. This is my dear friend, Diana Elizabeth Jordan, who is, as you said, an exceptional woman. During this time, you know, that we're celebrating women for Women's History Month. I think it's appropriate to start with someone so amazing as Diana Jordan, who is a testimony to what this life can be. She is, as we said, she is an activist. She is an actor, incredible actor, and she has a disability. And I'd like for you to talk a little bit about this disability and what is PC about CP.
Well, thank you, and thank you for that beautiful introduction, and you are my girl, yes. So thank you.
Love fest.
Yes, cerebral palsy is a neuromuscular and non-progressive neuromuscular disorder that is caused by brain damage to the motor area of the brain. Mm-hmm. It happens within the first 2 years of life, and it affects how a child develops their motor function. So, for example, for me, cerebral palsy affects my speech and my gait. I walk with a slight gait. I have a speech impediment.
Explain the gait.
Walking. So, for example, when I walk, I walk with a slight limp. Mm-hmm. I have friends who have cerebral palsy who use wheelchairs.
Wheelchair.
So it really depends. It's very individual. There are some people, I have friends who use a wheelchair but don't have a speech impediment. Mm-hmm. So it's very individual, but it does affect motor skills. It does not affect the intellect. It only affects motor skills, but they can be a range from mild to severe depending on the individual.
So one of the things that we've noticed in reading about you and just knowing you, when you talk of the intellect, talk a little bit about your educational background.
Well, I grew up, I had a mother who, or parents who wanted me to have the best of everything. So my mother fought to have me mainstreamed in schools from kindergarten on.
So you didn't go to a special school?
No.
You went to school with everybody else?
Right, and my mother, that's what my mother wanted for me, and my mother and father wanted that for me. So my mother made sure that I was mainstreamed and also made sure that the available resources to help me were available, because some of the fine motor skills like writing, the process of writing, understanding writing, I understood. The mechanics of writing were more difficult for me.
So the mechanics of writing was more difficult for you, and that was more or less the focus.
Right, and when I went to see the resource teacher, she would help me with the actual physical mechanics.
But as you went through school,
right,
I find it personally amazing that you went on to college, and talk a little bit about your background.
College is just, in my family, it was just a given. You know, I knew from first to second grade that I was going to go to college. My parents went to college. Both my grandmothers went to college. My uncles and aunts went to college. So both my sister and I were raised knowing that we were expected to go to college, and we did. And I started off at Illinois Wesleyan, which is a small university in Bloomington, Illinois.
Bloomington, Illinois.
And
that's where you got your bachelor's.
I actually went there for 2 years, then I transferred to the University of Kansas in Lawrence, Kansas. I got an associate degree in occupational therapy, a bachelor's degree in theater. Then after graduating, I went back to Chicago, and I began to pursue my acting career and supported myself doing work as an occupational therapist, independent living specialist, having whatever day job I needed to pay the bills. And then, but I always had this dream that I wanted to go to California. And I remember around 95, 96, 97 thinking, I want to move to California. I came out here for a conference of the American Theater and Accessibility Conference. And there was a woman there, Dale Williamson, who was talking about the need to train actors with disabilities. And I thought, I'd like to teach. I could do that. I'm going to get my master's degree. And this was in October of 97. I remember I was living in Chicago, was here in LA for a conference. I went home, I called 10 graduate schools in California, had them send me an application. On Christmas Eve, I was mailing 10 applications. That February I auditioned, they had auditions in Chicago. I got accepted into California State University, Long Beach, their master's program in acting, and I moved out here in 98. I got my master's degree in the summer of 2001, or May 2001, and I've been doing it ever since.
You know, as a matter of fact, Tyrone, I think we have a clip or two, or we have one clip we broke up in little pieces, small increments, and this first one will demonstrate some of your acting skills right now. When we come back, you can explain to us what some of these roles were. You about ready, Ty? You can roll it now then. Thank you.
Let's define our tremors, Mom. Yes, you and Dad have been to practically every play I've been in. but you never once told me you were proud of me. Acting is my profession, not my hobby. And if you and Dad are sitting around waiting for me to wake up from some dream you think I've been living, buckle up, because you're in for a long ride.
What?
You're not waiting for your mother.
No, I'm not. I'm waiting for my boyfriend, Peter. He's coming over with his dad.
Do you like Peter's dad?
I'm trying to, but you'll see.
Everything will be fine. You know how I know?
No.
Because everything is fine. He made death threats about the way in which he would kill them, and they were killed exactly that way.
Mrs. Wakefield, there's no evidence to warrant an indictment. Case dismissed.
No, the case is not dismissed. Sorry, I was in the moment.
So you're the minister of the church?
My official title is associate pastor.
That's nice.
Yeah. Would you marry me?
He thinks you want to marry him.
No, I meant, would you marry me to my boyfriend?
Oh, of course. Of course, I can do that.
But first you gotta get a boyfriend.
Yeah.
That's first.
Thank you.
So now you have a taste of that great acting. We'll let Diana tell us a little bit about what that was we were just looking at. I see that WB on there. What's up?
Well, two of the scenes were from Seventh Heaven, which I did in 2003 and 2003. The other two scenes were from a short film called One Day Richard, which my sister, the amazing Charlie Jordan Brookins, my sister is a writer and filmmaker, and she wrote that film for me, and it was called One Day Richard. And it was about an actress with a disability who is pursuing a career in Hollywood. And she wrote it. It was about an actress who really wanted to do Shakespeare, do the show Richard III. And my sister wrote that, and we worked on that film together. It was a wonderful experience to have your sister write a wonderful role for you. So.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your role as an advocate and activist, so they'll know more about how long you've been at it and your commitment to it.
I've been an advocate, I think, my entire life. I think I began to identify myself as an advocate when I got out of college. When the first jobs I got, day jobs, was working at a Center for Independent Living, which was when I was introduced to the disability rights movement.
Can you explain to our viewers very quickly what disability, what'd you call it just now?
Disability rights.
No, independent living.
Oh, Center for Independent Living.
That's a very important topic that very few people are aware of. Just briefly.
Well, with disability history, which started in the mid-'70s, where people with disabilities said, we want equal opportunity. We don't want to be marginalized. We want to be recognized as equal members of society. So, Centers for Independent Living, they're all they're independent of each other, but what they are organizations that help fight and organize for civil rights for people with disabilities. So at a center there may be people there who will help somebody get equal opportunity for housing. There may be peer counseling for people who recently acquired a disability and need someone who's been living with a disability for longer.
That's a good point. I guess that's quite an adjustment.
Yes, it is. Disability is the only minority that someone can join due to an illness or an accident. And so when you have to make that adjustment, sometimes having a peer counselor can be a great motivation, someone who understands, who has been through that same experience. Independent Living Centers also work to organize to continue to ensure that laws stay current so that our civil rights. We as a community of people with disabilities have our civil rights.
Now I saw where you have mild cerebral palsy.
Yes.
Now I notice in a lot of medical, I do a lot of research that some people who had children with mild cerebral palsy couldn't get as much help as someone who had a child that had a bad case of cerebral palsy, which to me was like insane. It's still a disability. I mean, as accomplished as you are, you have. What was your childhood like? In other words, I don't know, but in my studies and I've been in contact with other babies who were born with it, and it's something to do with the blood vessels.
Well,
describe that a little bit. How they believe like often at birth this happens.
Well, it's brain damage to the motor area of the brain, and that can happen through lack of oxygen. It can happen through some type of head injury, but it happens within the first 2 years of life, and therefore it affects the child's development. That's in the category of developmental disability, as opposed to after the damage occurs after the first 2 years of life. It's considered a traumatic brain injury, and that's how they differentiate the two. Cerebral palsy happens within the first 2 years of life. So, my childhood is interesting because in one way it was a wonderful childhood because I have two very loving parents. I grew up in a very loving home. I always knew that I was loved. I had a younger sister. So in one way, I think if you look at my childhood, it was very idealistic. And, I had the dollhouse and the Barbies, and I think on the surface, I had a great childhood, and I'll admit that. I talked to my best friend Sandy, and we talked about how lucky we were, how lucky I feel, how blessed I feel to have the parents that I did who ensured that I had every opportunity possible to grow.
I think your accomplishments is a testimony to that.
And not just focusing on the fact that you have a disability, that they did seem to have done everything that they could to make sure that you merged with so-called regular or normal people.
They did. I think the flip side is because I was considered different, I was mainstreamed, I was the only kid who had a disability, I felt different. I often heard, what's wrong with her? She walks funny, she talks funny. But that in a way affected my self-esteem as far as feeling that there was something wrong with me, feeling that I was different. I often put a lot of pressure on myself to try and keep up with everybody else instead of just embracing who I was and my own normalcy, if that makes sense. That I don't have to run as fast as my sister or whatever, that what I do is okay in and of itself. And not about sitting around feeling sorry for myself. It's just embracing how my body moves is okay.
That is really
embracing my voice. This is how my voice sounds. This is my voice. And though I work to be as clear as possible, this is still my voice. This is still my body. And I think it can be seen as just as credible as somebody without a disability. When we use the word normal, I think, well, for people who have cerebral palsy, having a speech impediment, that is normal.
Okay.
Walking with the gait, that is normal. So the word normal is, I know we have norms in the society. We have
What
to.
is normal?
Well, what is normal?
What is normal?
I mean, normal can be so, for me, people who put piercings all over their face, some people find that, they enjoy that. That, for me, is not something I would ever want to do. So I think normal is a very relative term.
Very subjective,
It is subjective, and I think we need to be careful, especially when using it around children, because they're so impressionable. I think if we can find a way to make all children, regardless of disability or not, feel special for who they are and the contribution they can make. And that's one thing I hope to do through my work as an actress and being in the public eye.
Well, speaking of that, which is so incredibly important, your mission as an activist and helping to shape the perceptions that people have of actors with disabilities.
Yeah. Well, one of my missions is to just change perceptions of people with disabilities. That's my mission, both as an actress and through the work I do as an acting coach, working with other actors with disabilities.
Tell them how many of your students have gone on to get roles.
I work at a place called Perform. One of the things I do is I work at a place called Performing Arts Studio West, which is a training facility and management facility for actors with actors primarily with developmental disabilities.
And this is where we met.
And this is where I met Maia. This is where I met Maia. And Maia and I worked together.
And Cornerstone, you're doing some work with Cornerstone Theater?
Yeah, the Cornerstone Theater is an amazing theater company that celebrates the beautiful diversity in our society through casting. And in May, at the end of May, they're doing the world premiere of Someday, which was written by Julie Marie Matt, a wonderful playwright, and it deals with reproductive issues. And I'm
but
saying,
the students, you didn't get to.
How many of your students have done a good job?
I'm sorry, we got it right. Okay.
This is quite an accomplishment. How many of your students have gotten?
Well, because so many have gotten jobs again. Since we opened, we've had student cast, and there were 650 roles, probably close to 700 by now. But most recently, we had students on ER and Saving Grace, the new Holly Hunter's show. So.
Well, you know what we're going to do is show, Tyrone's going to show the last clip, the last little portion. It's only about a minute and a half, but it is you and acting and so on. And once again, I want to say this is Blaze, and you're watching The Arts, Culture, and Us, and this is my co-host and super entertainer and mother of the universe and friend and all joy and all blessings, Maia.
Maia.
And this is our very special guest.
And your new friend, my dear old friend, Diana Elizabeth Jordan.
And this show is entitled Actors with Disabilities. And we're going to run that clip now, Ty, before we run out of time. Thank you.
The tale of this fair proportion, cheated of feature by dissembling nature, deformed, unfinished, sent before my time into this breathing world, scarce half made up, and that so lamely and unfashionable the dogs bark at me.
Why did she look funny?
You were fine.
And I hope by them. They're auditioning for Richard III.
And?
That's my play, that's my part.
Who?
Richard.
Lizzie, you can't be serious. I can't even play Richard III and I'm a Brit. I'm sorry, love. By all means, go for it.
Oh, yeah.
Diana Elizabeth Jordan, once again, we want to thank you very much for being on the show. We're down to about 2 minutes, so I want to, first of all, give you a few moments. Is there something else you wanted to share with us about disabilities, acting, or your future, or what?
Just that I really feel that we're in a time when in the entertainment industry, which is really exciting, where we're seeing more and more actors with disabilities being hired, not only to portray characters with disabilities, but also being hired to portray what I call the people in the neighborhood. Just to portray roles where the disability is incidental, like the doctor, the teacher, and those are the type of roles I hope not only for my students to get, but that I want to play myself as an actress, just to play the lawyer, the doctor, the mother, where it's about what's going on with my child, and the fact that I have a disability is truly incidental to the storyline. And that's how I live my life. I say my disability is a part of who I am, but it doesn't define who I am. And I would like that to be for the characters I portray too.
Maia, you have something you want to say before you start playing?
This is incredible. As I say all the time, you are a shining example of how far anyone can go. Anyone can go as far as they dream. And I am very honored to know you and have this opportunity for others to get to know someone like you.
Thank you so much for having me on today.
In closing now, we're going to say there's another term, and you can begin playing now, and there's another term that is closely associated with Diana Elizabeth Jordan, and that is dare to dream the possible dream. She does a lot of speaking, engagement, she teaches, she's an actor, actress, very beautiful person, articulate. So we are very pleased to have you and hope that you'll come back again and we can do additional shows on cerebral palsy and disabilities. Thank you.
I would love to. Thank you so much for having me today.